All right, okay, let's get started.
Hi, and welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you all. A lot of people in the chat this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Ryan Selvey, and I am very excited to be hosting Offset again, the show that we have when the Adobe Live team goes offset, and then you have me. So I'm a motion designer, a live streamer, creative, and I really like to just talk to artists, bring them on the show, talk to them about their work and their process. I'm really excited about today. We're having Michelle on. She's a good friend of mine. She is a very, very successful photographer, and I don't know as much about photography, so she is the expert today, and I am just giving her a platform. So by all means, if you have questions, you can ask them and I will ask her, but I definitely am not your go-to expert today. It's going to be Michelle, and you're going to love her. Very excited to share. And we're going to be going through some fashion photography. We'll be going through some of her process and her sketches. We'll be going through some of the artists that inspire her. And we're just going to have a really good show. It's going to be fun. We're here for the next 2 hours. So get comfy, get a coffee. I have mine in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like falling apart mug. So I'm good to go, but hopefully you're good to go. And it's exciting to be here for day 2. We're here for the next few days. We're going to be here till Thursday, and we have episodes each day at 12:30 Eastern and 3 o'clock Eastern. Or if you're on the West Coast, it'd be 9:30 in the morning and 12 o'clock. Did I do that math right? Yes, I did. But yeah, it's great to see so many people in the chat. We have Colby. Good to see you, Colby. Thanks for being here. Hi to Steve and Anki and Sean. Wade, thank you for moderating. Wade is an extremely talented illustrator, so make sure you check out his work on Behance as well. He also live streams, and he also did a live stream earlier this morning. I think so. I think he might have just actually might have just kind of came off of whatever just was before this. So you let me know. How's everybody doing today? This is a live stream, also available as a replay. So in the event that you're watching it as a replay and it's not live, hey, it's still good to have you here. If you're over here on YouTube, all the chat is happening over on Behance with Rick and Clever and RB, Robert and Bruce. So make sure you hop on over to behance.net/Adobe Live, where you can see this broadcast happening in the same time. Hey, Logan's here. Hi, Logan. How have you been? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. I'm sure Michelle's going to be excited to see you too. Stuart's here. And it's just, yeah, it's really exciting to see everybody. And I'm really excited to bring in Michelle. So without further ado, that's a lot of talking for me. I would love to go ahead and bring in Michelle. So without further ado, here's Michelle. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, it's going good. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Oh my gosh, no, it's absolutely wonderful. I'm really excited. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I guess the best way to start this out, though, probably would be just I gave you kind of a weird small introduction, but I mean, you probably know how to talk about yourself better than I do. So, do you want to just go and introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Michelle Czerwinski. I am a portrait and fashion photographer as well as a creative producer. I've worked in e-commerce. I've worked with just your regular people doing portrait sessions. I've done family sessions. Something that you learn very quickly as a photographer is that if you diversify your streams of income, the more income you will make. So yes, I am a bit of a jack of all trades. I do it all. Also really into like set design, crafting, building, embroidery. Yeah, if you list out hobbies, I've probably tried every single one. So today we're going to be talking about photography.
Yeah, I mean, make that money. Multiple income revenue streams. That's the golden. That's the dream. You know what I mean?
And that's something that came with age too, because when I was just getting out of college, I was very much like fashion, Vogue, right, and like almost looked down upon anything other, which is just so unrealistic. And I
Yeah.
think that if you're a true creative, a true artist, you can bring like the essence of what you care about to any single shoot, and it's only going to
Right.
elevate it.
No, that makes sense. But also at the same time, you still are a very successful fashion photographer. You really make me feel jealous whenever I see your stories and you're out with all the ladies for like the prom shoots,
Yeah.
and it just I'm like, oh, I want to just go put on a dress and go parading through the city and
Who
make
doesn't?
Michelle make me look really pretty.
Oh,
Uh,
exactly.
but
Exactly.
there's we still have the future, so it's still a
There's something
possibility.
to work towards. We'll start
Yeah.
pre-production now, today.
Yeah, that's why we're looping everyone in for the next 2 hours. I have hair and makeup coming in. Just give me some time. Also, did you see the Balenciaga had like a show like in New York, like I guess like yesterday or the day before? I just hit my Instagram. I saw it this morning.
Yeah, it's there's always something going on. I feel
There's
like
always
fashion
something.
shows are like they're pushing them to the extreme, and things have
Right.
gotten really, really interesting like post-COVID.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, that too. It's just, and then
There was that
yeah,
one season where everybody just did like online shows, and at one point I was watching a fashion show that was all claymation. I was like,
right.
how did I get here?
Right. There was things happening with the metaverse too, where people were like starting to do virtual like fashion shows, but they didn't necessarily have the like platform for what the fashion was going to be on. It was just kind of ambiguous. Yeah, yeah. It's constantly changing industry, and which makes it exciting at the same time, but it's also kind
Yeah.
of hard to keep up with. And yeah, I was just scrolling on Instagram this morning and I saw that there was something with Balenciaga, and I was like, oh, okay, hey, what's up?
It's the
I think
kind of
Meg is
industry
selling the
where
same.
you can't like focus in or get stuck on one type of something or anything, because it changes so quickly that if you attach yourself to one way of thinking, it makes you really jaded in the end. Like, you're like constantly fighting an uphill battle if you don't adapt and move with it. So I try to
Right.
stay less overwhelmed and more excited, but it's a challenge.
No, absolutely. And how did you get into fashion photography?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My childhood was documented by a film camera. I think that, especially like our generation and when we grew up, getting my first phone that had a camera on it was like eye opening, completely life changing. Like realizing that, in the same sense of like Marcel Duchamp and like the ready made, like if the artist points to it, it designates it as art. I was
Right.
like a 12-year-old being like, this is fashion, this is photography. Like it gives you the power to choose like what you want to document and what feels special and relevant to you. So that was something that I loved from the offset. I remember getting my first digital camera for my birthday, probably just like a little rinky dink, like I think it was a Sony.
Yeah.
Not a digital SLR, no lenses,
Nope. Just one of those
just the point
weird
and shoot, the good
digital
old,
cameras.
yup. And that thing was like a brick. You could build a house with it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, so,
Um,
like, entering into, like, teenage years, I recognized that I could really, like, create compositions, and it's more than just, like, a documentary tool, it's something that you can create with, which was helpful to me because, like, going into college and art school and furthering my education, I was still drawing, painting, doing art, and I didn't really realize that I could marry the two, art and photography, until I started looking at the work of like some fashion photographers that do a lot of prop styling, do a lot of like set building. And yeah, just the more I looked at that, the more I was like, wait, there's a way for me to do everything.
right.
um,
And we
and I
also live
started
in a very fortunate time where it's like the expectation of having to stick to one thing isn't really as much of a thing anymore. I feel like
yeah.
maybe previous generations or even when we were growing up, you kind of had to pick something that you were going to be completely set on and you're focused on it. And that was what you're going to be the professional of. And with the internet and how many mediums, I feel like that stigma, I would say it's a stigma, has kind
Mhm.
of faded away. And now you have the opportunity to be able to
Yeah.
be the artist that you want to be, which is cool.
It was kind of like that old way of like prescribing to life was like a corporate ladder, or like there was like one ladder and you climb it rung by rung. And now
Right.
it's like a creative mountain where there's multiple paths and you just have to follow like what works for you. That's
Ooh,
my
well
metaphor.
said. Creative Mountain with Michelle.
Heyo.
Sean's in the chat asking where you're from.
Oh, I'm from Jersey. I'm from
Very
Central Jersey. My family, parents, grandparents were all from New York, so I always had a tie to the city and have commuted in and out. And currently, I live in Jersey City, so I am real close to the action, but just on the
yeah,
other side of the water.
just a stone's throw away.
That's it.
But I guess with all that talk, I guess it'd be great to actually check out some of your work. So let's go into our first segment
Woo!
and let's look at your portfolio.
Let's look at your work.
So first up, when we right land on your website, which I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw that into the chat for you guys. We have this beautiful portrait of this woman sitting on the stairs. Where is this castle thing?
Pittsburgh.
This is Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh.
Wow. So exotic.
Right? You wouldn't realize. No, I say it like that because at my old job, like working in e-commerce, we were working with a lot of influencers and several were based out of Pittsburgh. So they would send me to Pittsburgh to do like guerrilla style shootings, like bare minimum budgets, and like trying to find picturesque moments in Pittsburgh proved to be a really big challenge. Like I shot the yellow bridges, I went to the Overlook, I went to the botanical gardens, like, you know, but ultimately it's a very industrial city, and
very industrial
style of clothing I was shooting, the vibes that I myself like go after, this like romantic, whimsical situation, like that wasn't readily available. So I found this location after searching through wedding venues, because sometimes you have to get creative and sometimes, you know, platforms like Peerspace don't have that many listings for Pittsburgh. Like once you leave New York City and LA, you know, like the major like hubs, it's a little harder to find locations. So I got creative. I contacted, this is, I believe it's called the Half Acre Manor in Pittsburgh, just outside the city. I contacted them, told them what we were about, and
do people live there, or is it just like
no,
at this point,
it's mostly inside is mostly like historical. I think they don't even really host events inside, but the outside they use for weddings, and they have like a giant tent up and a movable dance floor and all that jazz.
That's all right. I'm sold.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw the photos of the place, I was like, so this is why we need to have more money so that we can book this one place, because of all of my dreams that will come true if I go there. No, but everyone on set.
After everything you said, now you have dreams for Pittsburgh.
You know.
Wade's in the chat saying romance, whimsy, gotta be Pittsburgh. And Bruce wants to know if you have a directory of locations for various photo shoots, and is that difficult to have?
Oh, that's a very valuable resource. Yes, I do.
And you kind of just built that up over time, and that's kind of like a little black book that you've built, I guess.
Exactly.
And I guess you just have like in a Google Doc or something.
Yeah, I have a Google Slides presentation of all my different locations, and I've organize them by state, city, etc. A lot of them are through Peerspace, which is a website that I listed already. It's essentially the Airbnb for photo shoots, video shoots, events.
What is that called?
Peerspace.com.
Peerspace. Oh, okay.
A really, really great resource.
That's a great resource.
Yeah, so I would pull from Peerspace, add that to my doc. But you know what I did a lot of, which people will probably underestimate, but it was really helpful? The sun went away, my whole background went dark, and it got very dramatic. And
it was very dramatic. You're like, this is going to be really useful.
Spotlight hits, and I go, Google Maps.
Yeah? Just with Street View?
Yeah, I did Street View all over LA. I've probably walked miles and miles across this country on Google Maps, just looking for picturesque moments, picturesque spots, because like,
walk a mile in these Google shoes.
These Google shoes, I've seen some miles. They were made for walking.
No, I feel like that's such a big thing for photographers that I fortunately don't ever really have to run into as someone who does motion design or graphic design. Is my scene setting is always just a computer screen. And when you add a whole nother element of having to have location and then on top of that, having to have the location be isolated enough that you can hold the shoot without being interrupted, or like not without breaking any laws or having to get weird sign off.
Not
I feel like that adds
always.
a whole other thing of complications.
There's layers. And like as a photographer, primarily on my shoots, like not only am I interacting and engaging with the subject and like really prioritizing that energy and that relationship, making sure they feel comfortable, but you're also in conversation with the hair and makeup artist at all times. You're also, you know, touching base with the stylist. And so something that I really just apply to everything in life is like over communication, visual aids. So doing something like, oh, we're going to shoot in downtown LA, while that could secure us the funds to book the shoot, like I would then go and pull every single screenshot I could find and like have it in our shot list with the addresses, where we're Ubering, at what time, so that everybody was aware. And it helped a lot with the stylist too, because they were able to see like what the background colors are and pair that with something complementary or contrasting.
Yeah, because I also, when you introduce yourself, you also were saying that you're a producer of sorts. So, I mean, often is there sometimes where you go and you end up not even really taking a lot of pictures? You're kind of just the one pulling all the strings.
Yeah, no, I've done production work exactly like that before. I did a couple of editorial campaigns for Kleinfeld Bridal Party, Kleinfeld Bridal, which is super well known. They were launching a like sister company, like a secondary website specific to bridesmaids and bridal party dresses. So that was a huge, huge, huge gig to be producing their first launch campaign. And we went out to LA to, God, it's a Cliff Beach situation. I had to get a permit. It was so much back and forth with the mayor's office of California, and it all ended up being worth it because we descended from the tops of the cliffs down with all of our equipment, all of the models not wearing heels at the time, holding them in their hand, all of the dresses. We had like steamers and like a little generator so that we had power on the beach. Like, you don't think about the logistical nightmare that some of these locations can be. And as soon as we got there, there were, I don't know if they were like cops or if they were like park rangers, you know, there were authority figures at the beach checking every single photo shoot for their permit. And we were the only ones that actually had the permit. Everyone else got kicked off the beach.
Yeah, see, I mean, it pays to be prepared, you know?
Yeah, they don't play around.
Did they want any photos of themselves?
I wish. No.
Yeah, right. They're like, give me the stilettos. Let's go for it.
They're like, do you
is
need
this
a
the
glue?
Oculus right here? Is this the Oculus in Manhattan?
Oh, this. Yes. I was like, what are you pointing to in your room? I have no idea.
No. Is this is this a beautiful Oculus right here?
I'm like, is that a
over
VR
here.
headset? I haven't heard of.
I do have a VR head. It's actually like right over there too. It's actually like right on that thing. But that's a whole different conversation.
To answer your question, yes, this is the Oculus at World Trade Center in New York City.
It photographs beautifully. I really do love that building. I was not sold on it originally when I saw it because like kind of stands out weird. But then I read more about it and I learned about, you know, it being like Phoenix rising from the ashes and da 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 da. But even on top of that,
which animal do you think it looks like?
What animal do I think it looks like? Yes. Oh, I mean,
it says a lot about you. I feel like it's essentially like a BuzzFeed quiz. Like, which animal do you think the Oculus looks like?
I mean, it's like almost like a squid, honestly, like a sea monster, but yeah,
I say fish, but also porcupine.
Porcupine, definitely porcupine. I could definitely see that.
Once you're inside, it's a different story. Then we're all Geppetto in the whale's stomach, and it's just ribs everywhere.
It's like ribs, but it's so beautiful.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous space. Yeah, I had the same, experience as you. Where at first I was like, "Whoa, this is out there," and now, you know, you see so many buildings go up all the time in the city that look exactly like each other. They're all glass. They're all, you know, what they are. Yeah. And then you see something like this that really stands out. And I'm like, that much
photographs so well. I mean, she's so well lit. Did she have do you have someone with a reflector or a diffuser here? Or is this mostly like natural lighting that kind of?
Yeah. It's primarily natural light, and then there is a silver reflector, probably just like a 2-foot one, not even that huge, held about 8 feet away from her. So that's definitely not, the reflector is not the primary source of light, but it's just giving us like a little bit of fill in the eyes and softening that light. It was a really overcast day as well, so that lent itself to like this really soft, even lighting too.
Is that what you prefer? It would definitely be like an overcast day.
I'll take anything. Honestly, like I said before, if you get too hung up on something, you're just going to be fighting an uphill battle afterwards. So with on location shoots, shooting outside, like I'll take anything.
Right.
You do shoot differently having an overcast, like softer diffused light than you would with like harsh direct sunlight. I tell my clients we're never shooting at noon. Like I avoid noon at all costs because that's when the sun is just directly overhead, and
it doesn't make anyone look flattering.
Put in that light without going like this.
Yeah, right.
I'm always like, look up, find your light, fire, fire. They're in a back bend all of a sudden, like.
Which we do have some great shots of you, like directing some of your models to really explore their abstract forms of their bodies, which we'll get to in a little bit, which I think is cool. But obviously, if you're going for something with just focus on a regular fashion shoot, you might not want to necessarily do that. But how deep would you normally say you run with a crew as far as when you're going on a shoot with something like this? Obviously, you're taking pictures or you're directing, and then you have someone with a diffuser. You also have models. Does hair and makeup normally go with you as well? Is that something that's all kind of done in advance?
If it's in the budget, I always recommend for hair and makeup to be there on set. Even just like touch-ups through the day, especially outside, you have to think of like, if it's a hot day, they're going to get shiny. They're going to start, you just need like a little bit of oil blot or a little bit of powder. It's also helpful to have somebody to like change up hair on set, which, given the situation, sometimes it's easier than others. Like I said, that one beach shoot, we had like a generator to power like one curling iron. And
no way, really?
Yeah.
Bring the generator, and you have to bring it down from the cliff.
Yeah.
That's wild. And so where do you normally source that from? Does that come from the studios that then you work with, or do you kind of also have another black book of people you enjoy working with for hair and makeup and styling?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely have preferences when it comes to hair, makeup, and styling, especially hair and makeup artists, because there's so many different like styles. One thing that like I will say for a lot of my portfolio, like it's mostly commercial work. And so while I'm able to like imbue a bit of like my personal preferences and styles, you're really speaking more to like the client's branding. And if you're working with someone like an influencer who has a following and is known, like their face is known, everything's known, like you want to be true to their branding as well. So I go with the flow. I'm generally like, I can make it work. So it is something that like you're a bit up against though when it comes to hair and makeup. Like for a lot of these shots, the timeline, like the lifespan is the better word. The lifespan of these shots on the client's website, like they're going to be there for several years, and these products will be available to purchase for several years. So when it came to hair and makeup, which I always put together a mood board of different ideas, like radical things. Euphoria had me in like its clutches for a long time. I was like, we need rhinestones.
I feel like it had the world in its clutches for a while. Like
arguably, it still does.
It still does. It still does. But there was an inflection point, I feel like, a little bit earlier in the year where it was like, whoa, like we're just living in euphoria at this point.
We all go to Euphoria High.
Which I don't know if that's a good thing, because that is a lot of drug use. It's a heavy show, but the makeup is great.
Oh, makeup is phenomenal. And
it's also beautifully shot and produced.
Yes.
And I'm not
we're not knocking Euphoria. Euphoria has its hold on us. But that's something where I would like pitch all these, radical ideas and get a lot of pushback. Like this, we can't do that trend because it's not going to last to next season.
Right.
And then it's going to age the photo. So everything, it is very commercial, but that's something I'm looking forward to exploring in the future now that I have a little bit of space away from that and like more time to do personal work, is to explore like more radical makeup looks and get out there, do some weird things.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, I think that there is such a market for experimental makeup and experimental looks, and just finding a way to stand out more, even with photography, can go such a long way. Taking risks obviously is always scary, but I mean, your photographs are always so beautiful. So I say go for it. Get crazier. This obviously is not Pittsburgh, I don't think.
No, this is Scottsdale, Arizona.
Arizona. I love the flowers. I love the color grading. Do you feel like you do a lot of post-production photo editing, or do you feel like most of the hard work is on the ground?
No, I mean, I would divide a photo shoot into 3 categories. A lot of the hard work happens before shoot day. Pre-production is everything. So going into this shoot, I knew I was like, I really want to emphasize like that desert feeling. And I think if we like bump the highlights with some cyan and like warm up the shadows, that'll effectively do that. So I had that in mind going into the shoot. Then there on location, you know, you're seeing what's on the back of your camera and you're excited about it, but you know that that final like oomph is going to happen in post-production. So yeah, I'm glad you noticed the color grading. This is a different shoot for me.
That's great. I love this color. It's something I've always, I don't know how to do myself, but I see this, it's very like ephemeral. I hate that word, but like very comforting and warm, and like everything's good. I'm just walking through the desert.
Right.
And I always want to know how people pull it off, and I never can seem to do it on my own. But I mean, it looks so good.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's exciting. I have another question for you, actually, about also the build up and logistics behind a shoot. How long would you say that you have normally, I mean, in an ideal scenario, prior to a shoot to kind of get everything together? What's the process? I know you spoke of doing mood boards. Obviously, you have to reach out to people on your team that you want to work with. How long would you say you have to work leading up to a shoot? And then how long do you think you normally work after a shoot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a comfortable amount of time would be about a month, depending on the scale of the shoot. I had mentioned doing the launch campaign for Kleinfeld Bridal Party. That was a huge shoot with 6 models, 3 makeup artists, you know, just a larger team, more serious settings that required permits. So something like that took like 2.5 months, really.
Right.
My one little leaf is coming into frame. There you go. But when it comes to like clients or portrait shoots or like doing maternity or family shoots, like just 1 to 2 weeks is usually a good enough amount of time. Depending on the, you know, scale of the shoot too, how much people want to spend. Like I have different makeup artists that I would recommend. Some who, you know, day rate is like $700, and
Right.
you're gonna get like editorial, like super elevated, high fashion, beautiful work from. But not everybody needs that. So,
Yeah, I don't necessarily need $700 of makeup from a
$150,
maternity shoot.
yeah, right. Well, you know, there's clients out there who definitely do, but
Oh no, I know.
not
I
across
just
the board.
no.
That's definitely not the norm or the standard that I would hold. I wouldn't hold anybody to that.
Right.
Yeah, I'll be like, just go to Blow Bar and get yourself a blowout, and you know, you
Blow barn?
Blow Bar,
Oh no.
Dry
Oh,
Bar,
no.
Dry Bar.
Dry bar. Okay. Okay, so I'm also have your another portion of your website pulled up. It has a lot of your portfolio in bulk here. Obviously, it has a great variety. So many gorgeous women. You do such a great job at really bringing out their energy and their happiness, and everyone seems like they're glowing. And I feel like I'm missing out by just like being.
Right?
I want to be in all of these photos.
I love it.
Would you say you currently have a favorite that's on this page?
One of my favorites is actually right here. So the beach shoot, there's 4 shots pretty much. Oh, I didn't even know the website could do that. That's great. Yeah. So this is Nia, and she is an influencer originally from Pittsburgh, based in LA now. And the shoot was so much fun. The shoot was so much fun. It definitely affects and like creates a little bit of bias if you're enjoying yourself on set to be like, oh, I love these photos.
Right.
Because I just know I loved being there. But this was really fun. We were in Venice Beach. We started out in this like tiny little bungalow for hair and makeup, and we filmed some content for the website. I think we filmed like an IGTV interview. We filmed a couple of TikToks, just silly things like that. And then we hit the road, and I was like, come on, we're going to the beach. And just like everyone's hauling equipment. For shoots like this, like you have to think logistics, like where is the model changing?
Right.
So what we discovered is they're actually used for spray tanning. They're these pop-up changing tanks.
Yes, I was wondering if you use those little
It
like little
collapses, yeah, it
things.
collapses in the same way that like a silver reflector does. Just about like 2 feet big, with handles. So totally portable for your shoot. But yeah, you just like and it pops up, and on a windy day on the beach, you just have, 1 foot on the edge so it doesn't fly away.
So it doesn't
But
fly away like Princess Diary style or something.
yeah,
So,
literally Princess Diary style. But yeah,
but
I mean, it gets hot in there. I definitely don't envy the models changing in that tent.
oh yeah, I'm sure you don't want to hang out in there for any
No, no,
portion of
no.
time. You just want to get it done and then go out and get the picture.
It's essentially a sauna. But really, like, what I love about that shoot is the energy that the model brought to it. Like, she is super outgoing, like, just kind of like the kind of person who glows from within. And so it was really fun just chatting with her and connecting with her. I think that if your subject isn't comfortable, it's so obvious.
Right.
It's so obvious. So I think that's something that like across the board, no matter who I'm shooting, what I'm shooting, who I'm shooting for, like I know the model's name. I am chatting to them about their life. Like, you try to talk like the way you talk to your girlfriends or something,
Yeah.
in an authentic way where you actually get to know something about them. And then that lends itself to being really useful. Like when you're in the shoot, or maybe they're getting tired, or maybe they're not giving you the same energy, and you just bring up a personal detail or something that is going to make them giggle or smile. And like, they're usually like, oh my God, you were really listening.
Right. I mean, I feel listening goes a long way, and just also feeling seen and feeling like someone's going to properly represent you. To that point, do you kind of lean on regular icebreakers, or is there any sort of kind of approach that you have when you're starting out a shoot to kind of break the tension before you start taking pictures?
Yeah, so something that I do very from the beginning, like other than like an introduction and a hi, hello, how are you, is I share the mood board with them. Like I said, I believe in over communicating. So that's one of the first things I do is like just sit down and be like, so this is what I pulled. And when it comes to hair and makeup, I actually look at the model's Instagram, because I think it can be really overwhelming to sit down on set and like essentially a stranger shows you a mood board of photos of other models, other people, and they're like, we want you to look like this. Like, I just think that's really overwhelming.
Right.
And also sometimes completely unrealistic. Like everyone has different features, different shaped eyes, different hair textures. So to pull something that is just so far removed from that person doesn't make any sense. And like I said, it's going to be another uphill battle. So I will source hair inspiration. I will source makeup inspiration from going through the model's personal Instagram. And that usually is what like gets a giggle very early on the shoot day out of the person. Is they're like, oh, and I was like, oh yeah, I've stalked you. And like, okay. And then it's like, I loved how you looked at this red carpet event, and you just focus on like golden goddess diva, like kind of like buzzwords that talk overall about the vibe you're going for and the look you're going for. And then like with the makeup artist, you're like, so the wing has to go just like, that's where you get specific. That's where you get technical.
I mean, I think that's great. I think that obviously whenever you can speak to somebody's experience and then bringing that, to your point, into the shoot itself probably would make me feel very comfortable. And I mean, it's so much a thing of social gymnastics as much as it is gymnastics for all of your other talents, whether that's logistics and photography.
Yeah, sometimes you just feel like an octopus on set trying to make sure everyone's on the same page. But that, again, I keep saying pre-production. That's why pre-production is so important. Like
Yeah.
that sit down that I have with the mood board and the model, like I do that with the stylist. I do that with the makeup artist. I do that with the photo assistant, etc. So that everybody feels like equipped to not only show up and perform and execute it like properly, but that they also feel like they have some investment in your project. Because if everyone's just working towards your vision and they feel like othered by that experience, I just find it's not as positive. You can feel the energy, and the model feels the energy as well. So you really want everybody invested and everybody contributing their ideas as well.
100%. So we're about 30 minutes in, a little bit more so than actually that. And I've been putting you on the spot left and right to talk about your experiences. And so I want to give you a little bit of a break. And I know that we spoke a little bit before this about some artists that inspire you and other artists that you kind of get your muse from. So I think it'd be a great time to go in and look at some artists that you're passionate about. So let's do some art talk. So you provided me with two different artists, both very talented, similar but different. And I'll let you kind of talk through them for the most part. But I was also really inspired just kind of learning them through building some of these slides out. I like to use these episodes as such a great way to, one, learn about industries that I'm not familiar with. In real time, like all these questions I'm asking you, I'm actually learning things for production. But then two, it's also really cool to, find out about these other artists that really speak to you. And I'd love to hear what you think about them. So I guess you could take it away first with Camilla.
Yeah, let's talk about art. I'm still giggling from your intro slide and motion graphic. That is so cute.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. Thank you. It's a little bit dramatic. It's just a little tiny bit dramatic.
That's essentially what makes it.
Yeah.
So here we have Camilla Akrans. She is a Swedish photographer. So technically her name is pronounced like Camilla Akrans. But the number of times I listened to Google Translate to be able to properly pronounce it for this, and it's not going to happen. I have an American pronunciation. I am so sorry. I mean no disrespect. So Camilla is a fashion and portraiture photographer who, like I said, is Swedish, and you see that Scandinavian influence across like her lighting especially, but like the themes, everything she really shoots. So if we get into some of these photos, boom. Okay, so Camilla uses a lot of studio lighting, but nothing she creates is ever artificial feeling. She actually like completely rejects that notion of artificial light. She wants it to look like the sun. She wants it to look like, this like bright Scandinavian nature, like all of that. That's the fantasy. And I think she's super successful. One thing that I really enjoy across her editorials is this marriage between exterior and interior spaces and how the two feel completely harmonious by incorporating more organic elements. So this indoor shot, we see the same rose that the outdoor shot has, and obviously the same model, but I think it's more so like the overall mood and color story that like ties it together. There's a couple more shots from this shoot. I love that little dove there.
Yeah. Real quick with like, this is normally presented like kind of as a diptych, right?
Yeah. I mean, you figure like magazine spread, like a 2-page.
And it's cool, like to your point, to see the organic material being brought in from the first piece into the second one. Something that I thought was really interesting when I was looking at this one was the fact that she's making intentional choices to show outside of like a cropped frame. So you see like part behind the backdrop, but then also this foreground of this really embodying flower and bird, which is like almost like out of focus and just so close to the viewer. And it's not the main focus, but it's also really arguing for your attention.
Yeah.
And it's a bold choice, but it works well, and adds a lot of interest to the piece.
Yeah, I think there's this really conscious like breaking of the fourth wall in a way. Like she doesn't want you to believe that this is a white void of space. Like this is created. It's almost theatrical in the way that you see the stage, but like you suspend your what's it called, suspension of disbelief. Like you just go with it. You just believe it. It's the performance, it's the art, it's saying something. And I think, like you said, it's really effective.
So we do have some questions in the chat. One from YouTube that was brought over to Behance from Wade. And they're saying, when you save your presets, do you save the masking too?
That's a good question. When I use masking, it's typically specific to the photo. If you were doing like an overall gradient mask, making like the top half of your photo slightly darker or affecting the color, something that's like a smooth mask, I would save to the presets. But like I said, in my own practice, like I'm going in and like I'm adding extra highlight to the cheekbones. Like these things aren't going to be the same across the entire shoot. So if it's something general, I'll save a mask to the preset. But for the most part, presets don't have masks. And if I have to go in after applying the preset, that's what I'll do.
Cool. And then the second question we have real quick, and then we'll hop right back into the art segment. But it comes from Fire 360 dude. And they say, I started my photography journey 2 months ago. And next, help with Lightroom presets. When you save your presets, do you include masking? Oh, it's the same thing from the Wade one. So boom, double trouble.
Glad you took care of you, Fire.
Yeah, so good to have. All right, well, then we can hop back into this. I do want to make sure that I have the proper one for you. So here we go. We're going to load this again, and we can continue to check out Camilla's
work?
Which makes me just think of like the Duchess or what have you.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
She's got great work. Let's see here. All right. So next up, this is from the same series, right?
Yes. So again, like two essentially like visually different shots. That's something that I really respect about her practice, is that she gets such a variety of framing, of composition, like pulling in close and pulling further away. So something I really like is having this still life on the left, which, you know, while it's not selling a garment, it's selling a mood.
I like that.
And I think it's really cool, this like odd placement. It's like a neck corsage, let's call it.
Yeah. It's almost like when you used to have to talk on like the landline and you had to like, hold it up to your shoulder.
Was shoving some rose thorns to my cheek. No, I think that something like that placement of that prop makes that image on the right overall that much more interesting. You know, like taking a pretty picture of a person or a flattering photo of a person, while it's challenging, like it can be done. But pushing that person to really emote, including a prop that's going to make the viewer stop and be like, oh, I never thought to put a flower there. Like just that 1 second of pause might be enough for that viewer to then like really take a beat and take a moment to spend with your work. And I think that's like the biggest challenge that we face in this like Instagram social media world, is that attention spans are a bare minimum and retention rates are non-existent. So doing something like really creative propping, just treating it differently than you would, I think that, you know, that speaks so much to retaining interest in viewers.
Now, do you feel like you use props in your work at all?
A bit, not as much as I'd like. I think, I love this shot. I think an out of focus foreground element, hashtag trademark, I don't know. That's what I always say. I think that can really add a lot of dynamicism to a composition in a photograph. Right. So I'll often, for portrait sessions, especially if I'm going to be in like a natural environment, I'll grab, whether I'm going to the flower market and grabbing a bunch of like real live flowers, or I pull something that is an artificial flower, but I make sure it's really, really out of focus. Yeah. Or, you know, you're walking through the park and there's a branch on the ground with a couple of leaves. Boop, boop. Be resourceful. I think holding that just slightly in front of the lens can just create another layer of depth and more interest to the image. So I use props in that sense primarily, or if there's a specific concept. Like we did one shoot that was like retro roller skates, and this was in 2016 before COVID, before everybody got super into roller skates. So
In disco, it's like we are really rearing
I was
our head
on
towards
brand
that
before
right
the
now.
moment.
So we were
But for
singing
something like
Lizzo
that,
right
like,
before we started this, and that's a very disco song.
yeah. For something like that, like we sourced different size disco balls. We sourced like those giant lollipop with the swirls, like bubble gum, roller skates. So it depends on the shoot, but like in my personal practice, I usually like organic matter. And I think that's why Camilla's work speaks to me too, is because she always includes some sort of organic, natural element. And again, that speaks to like her Swedish roots and really what her work is all about. This photo I have to send to Ursula if she's watching. You're about to get this in a text in about an hour and a half. Because I feel like she's done something so interesting here where she's taken a photograph and made it feel like a collage. Like these
Yes.
elements feel like they're cut out in paste, but all of this was shot in camera.
Yeah.
And
No,
that just
it's also really interesting that she also had chosen to continue to still showcase the tape to the flower, which makes it feel very collage-esque as well, because you kind of see this cut and paste vibe. Also, the cropping to have something kind of imposing into the image and having that front flower go over into the black. And then obviously the white backdrop with the column. Yeah, it's just very collage wise.
Yeah, it's like this one shot takes elements from the previous 4 shots we've looked at and collages it all together to like
got that bird.
This hero image. The bird returns, the roses return, the columns return, the white backdrop, although this isn't like that fabric that we first saw, it still, is the elements of color.
Mm-hmm.
It's so freaking cool.
Bruce is agreeing with you, by the way, to the idea of having something in the foreground and having something kind of break the depth. He's agreeing on this. It's kind of like a little leak, like it's almost like a light leak. And
yes,
it adds a lot of character to it. I like it.
And what you said, like it breaks the frame.
Right.
And then
it's another one.
Yeah,
she likes her birds. She likes
I believe
the
this
birds.
is still within that series, but what I thought was really interesting about this was including, I believe this is one of the bridges in Paris, if I were to guess. I mean, it looks European. But like including this location shot, again, not necessarily selling the fashion, but selling the mood and building out the story. So she has this really beautiful narrative that she's able to create and build using only visual elements. And that's something that has always really interested me.
And in design, we talk all the time about negative space and the using it strategically. I think that can be said, obviously, in a very literal sense in photography. But to your point of selling the mood, I think the piece on the left really is negative space in the sense that it's giving you more context to enjoy when you do have the model and you do have the vibe, which is nice.
Yeah.
Next up is a different series, but same photographer. And this one is very nautical, which I like.
Yeah, this one is sick. This is so cool. Like, talk about just like jaw-dropping imagery. I saw this and I was like, sending to Ryan. Specifically, this image on left, I think, speaks to what you were just saying about negative space. And like, what works about this is that while you have these deep, deep, rich, dark values, you also have all of that texture there. So it's not just a flat, dark section. There's depth to it. There's interest there. And it provides such a lovely contrast for the model and the garment, and those starfish are really popping.
It's also, it kind of reminds me a lot of like the Birth of Venus with like very like Italian like paintings from, I don't know, like 1400s, 1500s. And it's still a photograph, but it feels very painterly, and it's really cool to see that. And even though it's just a photo, it feels,
it
breaks boundaries. George in the chat is asking what your go-to camera lens is.
So my go-to camera lens, I shoot on Canon, so I have a 24 to 105 millimeter zoom lens, which gets the job done. Yeah, I love the versatility of having a zoom lens. It's really nice, especially on the types of shoots that I'm doing. Like if I were in studio and I had a digital tech station and multiple lenses and multiple assistants and I could like stop and switch a lens,
Right.
yeah, maybe I would have a different preference. But like on location, running around, rolling in the sand to get the angle, climbing the stairs, like I really just want like a really versatile 24 to 105 so that I can.
And you don't want to change that lens on the sand and get that one grain on the sensor, and then you never get that camera back.
My good friend, who I believe is watching, she does concert photography, and I watched her in like basically a mosh pit change her lens, and I was just like horrified. And she was like, "This is the first thing I learned is if you're going to be afraid to use your equipment, you're not going to use it. So just get in there and do it." And I was like, "Wow, I really admire that. I really."
It's bold. I don't know if I agree with it, but it's bold. So I take it then
to it, but no.
I take it then when you're on site. Then do you normally just stick to one camera, one lens?
Yeah, on site, it's usually one camera. I have my 50 millimeter in my bag, like at all times. If I really want to push the f-stop super low and get like a really bokeh out of focus background, I'll switch to the 50 because the 24 to 105, I believe it only goes to f4, whereas my 50 will go to like f1.4, so like the most shallow. Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
Make it
like macro lenses. Did you see that trend on TikTok where people were like trying to get people to scratch their lenses?
No.
Yeah, your reaction is exactly how the rest of the photography community responded. They're like, just use a filter, do literally anything. But they were like taking rocks and like scratching the top of their lenses.
Oh, God. I hope they have like a
use
filter.
your source
Yeah.
for good. I don't know.
That was my first thought. I was like, oh, I hope it's like a polarizing filter and not their actual lens.
Nope, it was their actual lenses. It was disconcerting.
People will like do the hazy trick too if you smear some like Vaseline on your lens, and I'm like, I need a filter because I can't do that on my actual lens. You'll never get it clean again. So get yourself a really cheap filter or just buy a haze filter specifically.
Yeah, which like they're not too expensive, and I don't have much experiences with filters, but I have seen some photographers that I follow online talk about their use of it, especially with like orange ones or something that just kind of go and add some feel to it. It's a whole nother element that you can adjust it with. Back to these portraits. I once again, we have a really cool scene setting one with the waves, and the model's completely turned away from the viewer, and I just kind of like how it's laid out and the idea that she's like looking out to sea. Did she come from the sea? I don't know.
Yeah, I do get mermaid vibes from the whole situation without it being your typical generic mermaid, you know, what you would do to create that vibe. But yeah, I think this shot of the hair is so beautiful, like those really, really bright highlights and that little bit of natural wave. And just like that feeling, like you immediately think of like, oh, I just got out of the ocean. I feel the salt water like dripping down my back. Like I need my towel.
Right. Mermaids don't use towels though.
That's right. They only sun dry.
Only sun dry.
I think what you said about the
this is sun drying right here. See,
this is the sun dry stage. Starfish, raisins of the sea.
oh, we have a visitor. Hello.
Hi.
I knew this was going to happen at some point during this week.
I was hoping for it.
But here we go. I'm just going to hold him for a little bit. I don't know if that's super unprofessional or not, but here we go. Aaron says, sadly, Instagram and TikTok have people not thinking about the value of items. It's a lifestyle that is focused on buying more. Yeah. I mean, I also don't know if they even are able to buy more after that. I think they're just like, oh, I'll just wash off the scratches of my lens and we'll go from there. But it doesn't really work that way. Then I think this is the last one we have of this series with it. Do you know what is happening on the left? Is it a fish? Is it a shoe?
I believe so. She shot through a puddle.
Oh, okay.
It's a reflection.
Oh, I see, and she's upside down.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
I
Okay.
imagine the tide came in, or a really big wave, and just filled like some sort of like pool in the cracks and the crevices. And something that, like, I watch a lot of interviews and like behind the scenes videos from this photographer, because I am out there like screenshotting her light setups whenever they briefly glimpse on the screen. I'm like, oh, that's how she did it. But something that she says often is like, you need to have a plan, but not be afraid to, diverge from the plan. And if
Right.
you see a moment, like as a photographer, like you're supposed to be looking, like just look. And she probably, I like to imagine, she just looked down into a puddle, noticed the reflection, and was like, wow, this really serves to like the glimmer and it just like to the garment, to the material of the garment. I love that shot. I just think it's so creative, and I don't think it's something that would strike everyone to do.
And she really does make a point to really use the environment
Mm,
to her will, and the idea
yeah.
of taking it, and when we're looking at, the pictures of the rose and the shadow and the wave, and any place that we're talking about negative space, I think that she takes this idea that it's another element that she can work with, and then makes it, full screen, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So.
No, definitely.
Oh wait, no, we do have one more,
Yeah,
and
this
this
is the
one,
third
she
one.
feels so long. I mean, do you think this is like a fisheye lens of some sort?
I do think it's a wide angle lens, to be sure, but it's also proportions, model proportions, for straight size models are just like otherworldly sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
you figure that model is probably like 6'2", and
right,
if you've seen a 6'2" person's foot, like it's a size 11. So,
right.
while I do think there is some extension from a wide angle lens, you'd be surprised. Like,
As to much how much is actually real on set.
yeah,
It's
definitely.
funny. Oliver is saying you're going to zoom in on the model's eyes to see if you can see the lighting setup reflected. You're
That's, yeah, no, that's very, very
like,
relevant.
if that's what it takes. Also, hi,
It's
Katerina. Welcome to the stream.
I do
Uh,
that often.
so, we have one more set of images from
Mhm.
her, and that you kind of categorized over to a statuesque. Um, and we're in just a minute after this. We'll take a break and we'll do some monkey paws to do some stretches. But first, I really liked these pieces because, once again, she's using the environment to really set the scene, and also how close these croppings are with
Mhm.
both the model, and then like not full pictures of statues, but enough to just get their texture.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like there's something to the, like, specifically that horse statue, like, it's like bucking, it's, like, full of energy, it's like, it's a bronco, and to have that next to this very peaceful, beautifully lit, like, sunset image of this woman, like, it just implies that there's something going on below the surface. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
she uses the statues and the energy within those poses to, like, counteract or to just, like, add another layer to the viewing experience of like these, model portraits and shots like that.
Absolutely. I also see that Aaron's saying that she likes when photographers clearly plan the outfits to the environments. I know that's not something that everyone gets to do, but
Mhm.
yeah, these pieces really feel like they are a reflection and interaction with the pieces themselves, because she has a very elegant and dainty like blouse on, and then to
Yeah,
your point of the bucking of the horse,
yeah,
it just creates a conflict, but also you kind of
for
tie
sure.
the subject together.
I love
Um,
this. This is something that I take away from her practice too, is to pull away.
mhm.
Like, you can have a really, really strong image with a very, very tiny figure. And it's something that I specifically did when I was shooting at the Oculus, those photos that we were looking at earlier. Like, I just
Right,
kept pulling away and seeing how small I could make the figure while still maintaining that focus and like taking up that space.
right. She's also making really bold lighting choices here, with the idea that,
Mhm.
like, yes, this a large part of the subject is within shadow, but just kind of still pulling back and showing the light and shadow interact.
Yeah, and that
Um,
shadow just drives your eye to that portion of the composition, and she's even like tilted the horizon too, and like all of it just makes this like dynamic movement.
I can feel her walking.
I can too.
I know that sounds silly, but like honestly, it's a very photo in motion, even though it's obviously not a boomerang or anything.
Oh yeah, and I love this shot on the left of her like engaging with the space too, because you can
Yes.
be in the most beautiful place in the world, but like if you're just standing and smiling, like there's no variety of like imagery making there. So I love these, forced tilted horizons with movement, engaging with the statue versus it being just like an add-on next to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the rose shoot where she ties in these elements with very specific shots that just tell a huge story. And I want to buy that earring.
It is really interesting, though, that there really is no organic material in any of these shots, but it doesn't feel as concrete and like brutalist as you would imagine.
Yeah.
It still feels very, I don't know.
I feel like it's the
accessible.
light quality. I think it's just like the sun is the organic element.
Oh. Robert's also saying that Camilla apparently also does video, which I did not know. That would probably be cool. And then also for this this centerpiece, this frame also is really cool how it's framing her, and it's
Frame
the
within
center
a frame.
Yeah, it's a frame being a frame. But
they teach you these things in photo school, and you're like, oh, that's going to be really cheesy. And then you like see it out in the real world, like done really, really well, really beautifully. And you're like, oh, wow, I knew that technique, but I never thought to do it like this.
Right. And it's also cool to see it so well done. And then finally we have these, and the picture from the back, almost in passing, you don't tell that it's a human figure. It's an abstract form, and then the shadow reveals kind of what you're looking at in the bottom left.
That's a really nice takeaway. Yeah, like her hair, like her head really almost disappears into the shadow of the trees, and then you see it so pronounced on the shadow on the ground.
Like,
I love the movement in this.
Yes, absolutely. And then same thing with like the bucking of the horse back to this one as well. It's the horse again, but it's also now focusing on a portion of the leg, and just so much movement, which is cool. The one on the left looks like a 90s rap video.
Like she would do like the MC Hammer move and like
or MC Hammer, yeah.
Like right out of the frame.
I love it. Because it's such a different feel, but it still feels cohesive, and it feels like it's still connected to the rest of the pieces.
Yeah, so. And to our point about like there not being a natural organic element, like stone is organic, stone is natural, and here you get to see all of like the grit and grain of it.
Yeah. Do you know if she shoots on film or digital?
I believe both. From what I've watched and like crept on in videos of her production, it looks digital.
Yeah. We just had Aaron talking about film in the chat. Do you ever shoot on film?
Not if I can help it.
You're not a big film girl?
No, I appreciate film, and the quality of film is beautiful. Like what we were saying about Euphoria before, like they use Kodak film to film it, and that's where you get, we were talking about color grading as well. Like there's a natural color grade to different brands of film. So I have a huge appreciation and respect for photographers who shoot film, but I just had such a hard time with it.
No, and it's also expensive too. It's not very forgiving in the sense that
it's not forgiving. I think that for creative concepts, things that you're doing personal work, it's great to experiment, but like I don't think I would be able to show up to set with only a film camera. I would definitely be shooting backups on digital just in case, the temperatures were off and the film was ruined. I know how to do film photography. I studied analog photography in high school and then in college. So it's something I appreciate the magic of seeing, the developer make that image appear on paper. Like it's definitely, struck me in the heart, but is just not my strong point where I am at now.
And you definitely don't want to add another element of risk if you can avoid it for when you're doing a client. You only have one day to shoot. You can't really do reshoots. And
our good friend Ursula shoots film for like social settings, and I think that's the way to do it because she's able to experiment, but there isn't like that much at stake. not to say that her memories aren't important, but just to say, like, she hit me up last week and she was like, I accidentally double exposed a roll, and it's really fun. But if you were on set and you double exposed a roll,
you can't use it.
That's thousands and thousands of dollars at risk. So
Yeah.
I think there are definitely great ways to experiment with film.
Yeah. I also like how it also kind of creates this time capsule where every few weeks then she'll just do this photo dump, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened like 2 months ago, but she finally developed the film, which is cool.
That's how photo dumps should be. Like, that should be the nature of them. Like, I just got my roll back. Here's the best of it.
There's apps that I have. I used to use it more where it's like you took it and then you'd have to like expose it, which was fun, but you'd also have to fill up like the camera roll before you could then then
I think
get it
that's
developed.
nice.
So
it's nostalgic. It's like it's speaking to the experience in a digital way. I don't know if it's authentic.
Yeah, no, not authentic, but still. Computers can do a lot. So we're about an hour in, and as always, it's important to focus on our health as artists. So let's take a second to do some monkey paws. All right. So have you ever seen, heard, or done monkey paws before?
Yes, the last time I watched your stream.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then good. Then you're familiar. You are welcome to either join along or take this time to go to the bathroom, take a break. You've been on camera for an hour. I know that's not easy, so feel free to do whatever you want. But I would suggest doing some monkey paws. So first thing we're gonna do, and everyone that's watching, you should also do it too. These are some nice exercises to make sure that you are combating carpal tunnel or just wrist and finger strain as we're sitting on the computers all day and we're doing repetitive motions. It's really not what we evolved to be as animals, but here we are. So these are just a few different exercises you can do throughout the day to make sure that you're stretching properly and that you don't lose control of the things that help you make you money. So what you're going to first do is you're going to reach out both hands like this, and you're going to bring in your fingers and go ooh, ooh, ah, ah.
Ooh, ah, ah.
Yeah, noises are very important. You're going to hold that for a second, and you're going to release. Then you go down like this, and you're going to bring it in again. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah.
Happy Pride.
Some of these things might feel a little tense. Obviously, you don't want to push it too much if it hurts. This one in particular, for whatever reason, always like I can feel this one in my wrist of my left thumb. I'm not sure why, but
you should get that checked out.
Well, no, I mean, I also just have to check it more honestly. I probably should get it checked out. See a doctor. So we did this one, then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna flip our hands out like this. We're gonna be like, give it to you. Same sort of thing. Bring it in. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah.
Ooh, ah.
There we go. Okay, cool. Ooh, ah, ah. And then finally, the one that's always most difficult to me for whatever reason is you point them at yourselves like this, and you bring it in, and you make your face, and you say ooh, ah.
Ooh,
So,
ah.
you go and you shake it all up. You normally want to do these like a few times. It's also important to drink water, stretch your neck out a little bit, and we'll do it one more time. But just making sure that you're nice and comfy, and that you're also, taking care of your body, because I'm sure you're all lurking and working and just sitting there playing. So we'll do it again once more. Hands at the camera. Ooh, ah, ah.
Ooh, ooh. Ah, ah.
Like this. Pause for ooh, ooh, ah, ah, says Wade. Ooh, ah. All right. Out like this. Ooh, ah.
I feel like the creature from Pan's Labyrinth.
And then the last one, which is when it goes forward. And one of the only time that I've seen Labyrinth was when I was doing finals, like junior year of college. And
what a headspace to be in.
Yeah, I was like already delirious. I was trying to get stuff done, and we went in, and I was like, "What am I watching?" It was nuts. Anyway, guys, that's monkey paws. Thanks for doing them with me. Do them throughout the day. This is just a nice reminder to do it, but it's never a bad time to do it. Do it on the toilet. Do it on the subway. You know, you might
Get
not want to make
creative.
monkey noises on the subway, but you're probably also not the weirdest thing on the subway, honestly, if you do. So it's fine. We still have a lot planned for you guys. We're still here for about another hour, a little bit less than that. We do have another artist that we can go through, but I think we take a little bit of break from that
Yeah.
and maybe hop into some of the programs. And I know that, Michelle, you mentioned that you might be able to do some editing. Would you want to try that out a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I'm going to go ahead and pop on some tunes. What we got? We've got Dance Pop, we got Daydreaming, we got Feeding the Ducks, Into Space, Lo-Fi, Night Driving, and Rock. Do you have a preference?
I do love some lo-fi something.
Some Lo-Fi it is. All right,
Yeah.
so here we go. So if you get tired of it, just let me know. We can switch it on up. But it'll just be some nice background. You can work and lurk and chill. If you guys have any questions for Michelle as we do this, please, by all means, throw that in the chat. I'd love to answer and give you as much information as we can. But here we go. And we have already a wonderful picture from the Wonder Wheel. Is this at Coney Island or is this at in California?
This is at Coney Island.
Coney Island. Don't necessarily get on there because I'm not sure if it's the safest ride. You know, they do have those rides there for like 100 years. I got on a roller coaster and I was like,
and dodge from screws and
exactly.
cogs that are falling off.
It's charming as long as you put that in the back of your brain. You're just
right.
Like, okay. So what are we looking at?
Right. So here we have an editorial image from a homecoming shoot at Coney Island. I wanted to really focus on like fabric retouching today because I think it's a little tricky and a lot helpful. So we're just going to start out by duplicating my base layer. You never really want to edit on your original, and this way as you make your edits you can toggle that visibility and see what you're actually doing. So looking at this entire bodice, I think this is really the point of contention. This is the problem child in this photo. I'm using.
So is that kind of where you start first? Is you kind of just identify some problems that you really want to kind of prioritize and then kind of work your way out from there?
Yeah, because especially with fashion photo, I feel people can get so carried away and it's just not necessary. Like what you really want to remove, at least for me, is anything that distracts your eye. So for me, that's the bodice. This is all very distracting.
Bruce is saying, is this Photoshop? Yes, this is Photoshop.
Yes, this is Photoshop.
Would you say that you predominantly are in Photoshop or in Lightroom?
I will do all of my color and lighting edits in Lightroom. But for things like wrinkles, for facial retouching, I bring it over to Photoshop.
Now, when did you first start learning Photoshop?
I would say in high school, I had a super rudimentary course. I think that's when Apple was doing all of those advertisements where everything was like a silhouette, a black silhouette with the white headphones.
Yep.
To date me. Yeah. And that was one of our projects, was to do a photo shoot and edit it in that way.
Was that for a photo class or were you like on yearbook or anything?
Yeah, that was for digital photo. So I'm just going in with my patch tool, which is my tried and true tool. I feel like my advice for people that are starting out on Photoshop is to just find one tool that's really versatile and works for what you need it to do.
Right.
Use that.
Now,
and then
with
you
the patch
continue
tool,
in other ways. Yeah.
With the patch tool, one thing that I always like run into is towards the top, they have the different types of patching with like whether you do like source or destination, and then also the diffusion of it. Do you feel like you normally stick to source and just have it so that you can kind of drag things around?
Yeah, I stick to source because it's what my mind like is used to, you know, where as if you switch the order, it's like shooting through like a large format camera or looking at a streaming screen where everything is mirrored and you're like, wait, which way is left? So I don't really mess with those too much.
No, I agree with you. I'm kind of in the same mentality. Logan's in the chat. Hi, Logan. It's good to see you. She says that she did the project too and can confirm that Michelle's was better. So I didn't realize that you guys were in class together.
Yes, we went to high school together. I've known Logan since 3rd grade. Something that I used to use the patch tool for, which was like so silly of me, was if you're like expanding your canvas, so drop into canvas size and like say I want to extend it on the left side. I used to literally in college, like I should have known, I used to like select here and like drag in, like it doesn't even work because there's no pixels there. And like then I would like start and I'd get the clone tool and I'd be like, okay, I'm
Such
gonna
a stressful approach.
and I would do this and then I would patch it over the weird areas. I don't know how I didn't get read for filth by my photo teachers because that's just not how you do it. And as part of my segment for I didn't know that was there, I quickly was introduced to Smart Fill.
Oh, okay. Wait, let me play a little intro for it then, real quick. Here we go.
What? I didn't know that was there.
So teach us a little bit about Smart Fill, and how do you use it when you're extending your canvas?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really common to have to extend a canvas, especially for like e-commerce clients, because often they'll see a vertical and they'll be like, oh, I want that to be our webpage banner. And it's like, what? So what I will do is expand the canvas using what I just did before, and I will select the area of negative space using a selection, like a marquee selection tool. And if you just hit Shift Delete, the Smart Fill window will pop up and you say, yes, I do want you to smartly fill that. And so
Always say yes.
it's a verbal command. No.
Voice activated Photoshop coming to a computer near you.
Hey, Adobe, you heard it here first.
You're gonna get a message. You're gonna be like, Ryan, please don't promise features. I'm like, no, it's out there. I said it.
We're getting all these DMs to customer service saying.
It's all on offset that everything's voice activated. How do I turn that on?
No, I will not get you in any trouble. I think Smart Fill is a great tool. Obviously, it's smart, but it's not a genius. Like you do have to double check. And if there are areas where there's like obvious repetition, you just get rid of those.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has gotten easier over the years. Kind of having to not have to, I don't know, clone stamp or stamp tool the whole canvas. And also having AI that can then also begin to flip things and move things around. Yeah. But I remember back like right out of college or even in college as an intern, working on retouching random product shots for the agency that I worked for and just constantly battling with being like, you can tell that that's cloned from there. How do you change that? And, you know, really finessing the smallest changes.
Yeah, it's time consuming.
Yeah. Now, when you normally sit down to do a lot of your edits, do you normally like to watch anything? Do you pull up some stuff to watch in the background? Do you listen to podcasts? How do you kind of zone out while you work?
A little bit of everything. Yeah. What's key is hitting that highway hypnosis level of zoning out so that you can just keep going. I used to watch a lot of Hot Ones while editing. From
That's
First
fun.
We Feast and Complex. Yeah, that was always
This brings
good.
us to our next segment where we're gonna have some hot sauce and then try to edit some photos.
I can only imagine the intro motion graphic for that.
Oh man, you can also only imagine how much of a wimp I would be because I cannot do spicy food.
No, I wouldn't last a chance. I wouldn't stand a chance. So something that's like, so annoying and troubling about fabric is that it has texture. And something that the patch tool is really good at is applying texture from one section to another. So like if I were to drag this to a section of her skin, it would stay blue, but it's gonna give me her skin texture, which I don't
I sometimes get
necessarily
frustrated with, because I'm like, no, I want skin over there, and then I have to like find the proper way to move it around.
Yeah.
And then so I'm like, they should change this, and then it just takes me one time to use the texture feel of it, and I'm like, oh, this is so great, this exists.
I like to use a mixture of the clone stamp and the patch tool, because sometimes like, you got to just think of like, what is a fold? It's a highlight and it's a shadow, like looking at these. So while the patch tool will do a good job, let's see how it does. Sometimes I think you just get a little too far from reality. I'm going to undo that, take my clone stamp at like a medium opacity. I'm not looking at texture. Texture is obviously going to be wrong for now, but I'll just.
So that's something that you normally do secondary. You'll normally update it and then come back with texture.
Yeah, exactly. I'll start by like kind of neutralizing the highlights and then neutralizing the shadows so that they're just like a little bit flatter overall. And then when I use the patch tool, I find it just goes a little smoother. So areas over here, you don't have that same clarity of texture as in the highlights. So I'm just going to make sure that I keep that consistent by pulling to, this sort of more out of focus area versus that crunchy fabric up there.
Aaron wants to know if you ever use the old school burn and dodge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Effectively, what I'm doing with the stamp tool is similar to dodging and burning. And there are a lot of different schools of thought about retouching and different ways of using it. So if you go into like super elevated like beauty photography and beauty retouching, they hardly ever manipulate pixels the way I'm just essentially moving these pixels around and generating new ones that look better for what I need.
Right.
But for not high fashion, but for beauty retouching, they'll really just dodge and burn. For example, like here's the shadow, here's the highlight. They will go in and they will dodge the shadow to lighten it and burn the highlight to darken it. And then when you zoom out, it's like essentially neutralized the same way I was using the stamp tool. Could you imagine doing that?
That's a lot. I mean, there's so many things about the fashion industry that I am not interested in ever doing myself. Like, you could not pay me enough money. But you know what? People are passionate about it. There are some incredible things that come from it. It's just, I'm not one of those people.
A lot of people will outsource that work too. And I mean, it's a choice.
That's wild.
It's realistic. I mean, it's good to do, but sometimes those people who you're outsourcing to don't have the best work conditions. So you just have to be careful. You have to make sure
ethical and
everything's ethical. Yeah.
I think something that you brought up earlier was also a really good point to, especially people who are kind of approaching photo editing for the first time or in their beginning stages, is to kind of do these mental gymnastics to remind yourself how a computer thinks and also how our brains think. It's something that you run into even when you're drawing, but the idea that you're like, really a fold is just shadow and highlights, but our brain is already telling us what a fold is. And it's like, no, you have to remember that, the computer doesn't necessarily even know that this is a picture of a dress. I mean, it's getting better at that, but just kind of reformatting your brain to completely take any understanding of what you're looking at is going to help you with editing. Just be able to, take those two
Yeah.
things apart.
Definitely. And like I said before too, like sometimes you don't need to completely flatten a section. Like just neutralizing it is enough to stop your eye from getting distracted when you're looking at the overall picture.
Right.
Because we're not going for perfection. We're just going for not distracting.
Exactly. Just because, yeah, the person's looking at the whole composition and they, you know, you don't want to get too zoned in on one small area and then the person doesn't even notice that. But wow, already look at that. It's what, been like 10 minutes? And look at all those folds that you already just kind of completely eradicated.
That's right. And what I'll do after I look at that as kind of like my base.
Mhm.
And then, you know, to whoever had brought up dodging and burning, I effectively do that with curves. So I created a curves layer and I inverted the mask so that it's not applying this curve anywhere. And then I effectively kind of like digital paint with the brush tool. I'm gonna make sure that I've got white selected so that I am revealing. And yeah, I'll just play around with the opacity here. And like for these kind of mid-tone sections, I'm gonna keep it low at 30% opacity. And then for something darker over here, like I'll bump it up to 70. You see how the edge is a little too bright, like I'll go a little smaller, drop it to 50, try again.
Very painterly.
Yeah, I find this part pretty relaxing. But yeah, I guess this is pretty much just me dodging and burning. I'm mostly just
Dodging and burning with Michelle.
dive, duck, dip, dodge, burn.
I see in the chat that Bruce is saying, don't forget that zipper, but I don't even see a zipper.
There's a zipper over here. Like I said, I could go in there and get rid of it, but is it really that distracting when you're looking at the image like this? I'm more concerned with these folds over here. But sure, Bruce, just for you. This is actually like a pretty tricky edit because it's right on this line of shadow and like highlight, medium tone, I'd say. So I'm gonna try it with the patch tool, see how that goes. And I'm just gonna drag it. Whoops, I'm on the wrong layer. Photoshop.
Wrong layer! I always think of Emperor's New Groove when she's like,
Wrong
layer! Why do we even have that lever?
Right.
My wrong layer. I don't even have that layer.
There we go. Whenever you're using the patch tool over like an edge, it's like so important to make sure you maintain that edge because otherwise it's just all gonna be lost and blurred. So that's what I was saying with that. You know, we're getting a little bit of blue in there. So I'm going to hit that bracket key, downsize my brush.
That, or you can be doing some James Cameron editing for Avatar.
Oh yeah, what's that like?
You know, Avatar, the blue people.
That was a retry.
I don't know. There's like 4 new movies coming out, okay? And one of them is... Yeah, there's literally, I think, four new movies coming out.
I'm very excited for the next one. I saw the trailer and it looks like there's like a whole underwater world sequence, which that's gonna be cool. I can't wait till they add it to the Disney parks.
Well, I mean, yeah, they already have the whole Avatar world at Disney World. They have the Animal Kingdom. It's actually pretty cool.
I really want to try that out. I hear it's beautiful at night with like all of the glowing flora and fauna.
Right, it's cool. Also, I mean, I just like alien stuff. So Wade's saying that he does something similar painterly with illustrations, which I think there's a lot of overlap between photo editing and illustration. You know, a lot of.
I didn't realize. Yeah, I definitely didn't realize how much overlap there was until I tried digital painting for the first time, and I was like, oh, hey, this isn't too far off.
Been here before.
Yeah, I'm like, this isn't. I think that for, photography is such an accessible medium. Everyone's got a camera on their phone. So I think it can be a little bit of a learning curve if you don't have a background in art. Like if you don't understand like shadows and highlights and everything in between. Like when you start editing, maybe it's a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, I'm very appreciative that I had to do fabric studies and drawing classes and just to kind of understand, that this is a fold is just a highlight and a shadow.
Also, Gareth is saying you're not an artist until you've worked on the wrong layer, which ain't that the truth?
In a big way.
Speaking of your experience, we do have 2 more segments that I want to make sure we touch on. One of them is From This to That, where we are talking about your growth as an artist and going from one place to another. And you were kind enough to send over a handful of images that we can check out. So let's take a break from this and check that out.
From this to that.
So first up, we have these 2. We already looked at the one on the right a bit, but the one on the left is from a while ago. You said it was what, from like 2011?
Yeah, I think this was 2012. I think that shot was from like my freshman year of college.
And who is that on the left?
That's Logan. She's in the
That's
chat.
Logan.
I texted
wondering who we were talking to earlier.
Yeah, I texted her last night and I was like, hey, you can totally say no, but can I use this image for a live stream? And she so graciously said yes. So thank you, Logan, illustrating my earlier work.
And so the reason I paired these 2 together was obviously because the 2 of them are both sitting on a set of stairs. They're both looking off to the left, but they have 2 very different feels for many different reasons.
Right.
How do you think your work has remained consistent? How do you think you've changed and grown? How do you see these 2 relating to one another?
Yeah, I think that these, yes, of course they relate because they're sitting on stairs, but like I had mentioned before, like what I take away from like artists like Camilla is to just like pull back and see what the overall space can do. So in the case on the left with Logan's portrait, we were at, I think, our high school. So revealing more of that environment wasn't going to serve this photo at all. The main takeaway I would say that I wouldn't do again if I were to recreate this photo on the left is using a 24mm like wide angle. There's like a bit of foreshortening happening that, I don't think it distracts me. I think it like serves for like a fun highlight moment of the sunglasses, the portrait. But when it comes to looking at the lines of those stairs, it becomes a little bit distracting. So in this photo, like, yes, it was intentional, I believe. But that's something that I'm definitely more aware of now is using that wide angle to more so like elongate the body instead of like elongating one feature.
Right. Now it makes sense. Next up, we have these 2 pictures. I mean, for some of the ones that you sent over that were like older ones, I was still like, dang, they're still so good. But obviously, these 2 great portrait shots. And how do you feel like you've kind of grown? You were playing with some lights here on the left that you kind of have more of like a filled scene on the right. I do still enjoy the selected lighting on the left, though, and I'm kind of wondering if you'll still bring that into future works, and kind of how your approach to lighting has changed over the years.
Yeah, no, thank you. I do still love this image on the left and feel that it's one of the stronger shoots that I had done at that time. And that lighting, we were shooting in a conservatory, like a botanical garden. And so that lighting is literally a palm frond getting hit by sunlight and just naturally creating these lines. So something that I, again, had said about Camilla and the way that that photographer works, like when she found that puddle, it was only by being aware and present in the space that I was able to notice like, oh, hey, actually, we're getting some really great shadows from this lighting. And how we could incorporate that into the shot without pulling away from the beauty. the real like major difference in how in this left image versus this right image is how I was retouching. The image on the left, like beautiful. I'm really happy with the retouch, but it was just so heavy handed. And while I didn't change any of this model's features or anything, like I was so zoomed, I was like 300% zoomed in, going into like every single pore. And like, I just don't necessarily think that is the way to approach a photograph anymore. I think that I was relying on the retouch. So rather than working more with that model, working more with some light adapters and modifiers, instead I was like, well, this is good, but it's going to be great after the retouch. And that's not how I work anymore, which I'm glad I've, kind of gone beyond that.
I mean, that's a strong growth. I feel like that's kind of what everyone kind of works towards. You want to make it feel like you've touched it up a lot, but in reality, if you've just been able to get closer to your image from the beginning, that's going to be good. Because in film production, you're like, well, fix it in post. You're like, no, it's going to be so much better if you just actually fix it on set.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
Next up, I know we also looked at this one on the right already, but I felt that these were similar in the sense that they're both, females kind of like walking forward, and there's a motion shot.
This one, the main difference is color grading. I didn't know how to do it.
Yes, the one on the right looks phenomenal in growth. The one on the left, obviously, still a great picture, but you can tell that, especially with skin tones and just bringing out the natural feel of like livelihood, is really present in the one on the right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember taking that shot and being so excited. We were in Pennsylvania, like near, like, what is it, a trundle bridge or that's a bed, a trestle bridge, whatever, something very.
A truffle bridge. It just has a bunch of like, chocolates on the side.
It's very expensive.
It's very expensive.
So we were at this exclusive truffle bridge, and I just remember like the wind hitting just right and everything lining up. And sometimes like the wind can be a paid actor on a photo shoot, really. If you're not getting it naturally, you can always request for the makeup artist to bring like, they sell mini leaf blowers. Makita is the brand. And this one makeup artist I worked with regularly, I was constantly like, we just need wind. We just need wind. She went and bought one and brought it to every single shoot from them. Yeah. It's tiny though. It's like a handheld. It's maybe, it's great to have on set because it can take an okay photo and make it just a little bit more exciting. But yeah, the main key takeaway from that was like, there is no color editing on that first image. And the sun was backlighting through the green leaves of a tree. And so overall, like the skin just lends itself to be sort of green in color.
A little bit more sickly with that green and that blue. Whereas then you're still kind of also fighting those same colors with the one on the right, because I mean, I know this was a West Coast, right? So I feel like the water is a little bit more blue on the West Coast, but still on the beach, I feel like the colors of the ocean are still very green, and you've managed to kind of eradicate that feeling.
And I learned that, you can backlight a photo and still have a properly exposed front if you just use a modifier. And the beach is an incredibly reflective surface because sand is glass. So if you're taking beach photos, you're going to get a lot of uplighting. So the way to counteract that is to bounce the sunlight so strongly against the subject that you don't see the uplighting of the sand. You just see nice lighting. But the reality, it's like one of those things like the photo and then you see like the reality. Like the reality is we were surrounded by people on the beach. We were getting like whipped by sand, whipped by like waves, trying to make this moment happen. And she was just like practically blinded by that really, really strong gold reflector. So props to the model there. Nia did an amazing job.
No, I love the whole idea of the photograph versus reality, and the idea that all these Instagram photos look so isolated and people are just having a great time alone. In reality, they're surrounded by hundreds of people.
There's a photo of me from set one time where we were essentially shooting, it looks like a field, but it's the edge of a parking lot. and I found the perfect angle, but unfortunately I had to just lean back across the hood of a car, and I was balancing a reflector on my foot. So there is a shot of me somewhere out there on the internet where I'm just like, it's for so much like glamour and beauty happening in front of the camera, the reality of behind the camera is hilarious. But you have
But
to
ain't
be
that the
able,
name of the industry, you know?
yeah.
Name of the game.
These
Um,
next shots.
These next shots, I paired them together because once again, in this one, as far as lighting goes, you have this kind of light flare on the left of light coming directly at the viewer, and then on the right, you have it still coming with the shots, but completely different lighting as a
Mhm.
whole of the piece. And I thought that was an interesting evolution.
Yeah, no, definitely. This shot on the left is of a model, Alexander, who an artist actually, um, who I knew in college. So this is a studio shot from college. Obviously, we see the improvement from like my earlier portraits from high school or freshman year. But yeah, I love backlighting. I would backlight everything if it was the option. Um, and so this photo on the left is really like the first time I was experimenting with that. And you do get this huge lens flare of that light hitting your lens. Which was something I was able to kind of avoid a bit more in the shoot on the right, just because the camera settings and the additional lighting on the right side overpowered those light sources so that they weren't able to cause like the same flares.
Right.
Does that make sense? It's like
Yeah.
so hard
Because
on set.
it's also difficult. I know you said that you really like backlighting, but at the same time, the idea of backlighting is so traditionally frowned upon because
Mhm.
it makes things a lot more complicated. But if you approach and break the rules properly, obviously you get a great piece like this where it works to its benefit.
Yeah, I think that it's such a beautiful atmosphere that backlighting serves to like create, but at the same time, like if you're doing something in fashion, if you're doing something for a brand, like the product color has to be correct.
Right.
The shininess of the product has to come through. So it's more about the product than the mood sometimes. You have to, compromise here and there.
Yeah. I mean, it's
But
all
here, I think in the right side photo, I was able to get that atmosphere, and you do have a little bit of flare around that one Fresnel light, but for the most part, this was lit by an octabank and fills all coming from the front.
right. Once again, like reality versus photo and just the idea of what's not pictured.
Hmm.
So let's take a look at just one more. And this is one I was actually talking about when you were asking your models to really use their bodies as interesting forms. I like the one on the left. And I like the one on the right. And even though the one on the right feels way more product focused, it feels, like a exploration of both the space and the dress and the model. I think that the one on the right still really perfectly shows your eye for more than just a figure being just a human, but a
Hmm.
collection of shapes, and then also using the environment and the dress. So I think that you basically have accomplished what you were going for on the left, which is still successful, but then you were able to still expand it into a piece that kind of looks similar to the other pieces, but has the abstraction of shape.
Yeah, thank you. No, I love this black and white project on the left. It's one of the few things from the later half of college that I think still like stands the test of time, and I'm still like super super proud of those images. Like there's nothing I would change, which is saying a lot. And I think that in both of these images, it speaks to this kind of resiliency that you have to have as a photographer. Like if we zoom out and reveal what was really happening on the image on the left, like I was in a very tiny apartment in Paris using physical lamps, like not photo lights at all, just lamps. And I
Right.
took all the lampshades off so that there was no modifier, no diffusion. And I like stood up on a chair and I just worked, and really like that was, I think, the first project where I had to learn like patience and communication, and really really stress the importance of sensitivity for your subject. Like
Yeah.
working with nude models, even though I was friendly, before the shoot with these people, you just have to really put their comfort as the most paramount thing on set, and make sure that when you're exploring these shapes and these shots, like it's something that you both feel comfortable doing.
Right.
And that's something that, I could apply to the shoot on the right. This is with a model. She's a dancer. Her name is Mia. She goes by Mia Muggs on TikTok. She's a fantastic hip hop choreographer, everything. She could do it all. And I was so excited to shoot with her because I was like, I can't wait to work with someone who knows how to move their body. And so she was just super receptive, and I was able to like identify with her, like, hey, this is your strength, and I can't wait to like use that to create something together.
Oh, I think that's so well said. With especially like having that relationship. I know we were talking earlier about the idea of how you kind of make that icebreaker, but obviously when someone is comfortable enough to also like, shed their clothes and be in a very vulnerable, intimate space with you, that obviously gets even way more complicated and, delicate. And obviously I think the one on the left feels very tasteful. It feels, respectful. And that takes a talent and a relationship between both subject and photographer, that, to your point earlier, you were saying if someone's uncomfortable, it's very clear
Yeah.
very quickly. And I just think the one on the left is such a strong pose. I don't know, I think it's great. I think they're both really wonderful. And also we put the link for Mia Muggs in the chat.
She'll love that.
So we only have a few more minutes left, but I do want to touch on our one last segment that we have for the day. And that's one of my personal favorites. It's called What's in Your Sketchbook?
Ooh, what's in your sketchbook?
So real quick, I know obviously sketches are a little bit different as a photographer. You were kind enough to share over some of your mood boards that you've had. I just kind of wanted to see how you source your material, how you kind of present it and pull it together, and kind of what we're looking at here.
Right. So this is a mood board. None of these images are mine. I'm not claiming any of this work. These are all sourced from Pinterest. That's primarily where I go to source photo inspiration, specifically for posing and for like mood and aesthetic. Talking about pre-production, I like to have multiple mood boards. Like maybe you'll find someone who's like, here's one mood board that says everything, but I like to have a light mood board, a pose mood board, a location and props mood board, and then I do a whole mood board for hair and makeup. And I think that what's really important about sourcing inspo and reference photos is that you're not recreating these images. And unfortunately, I have seen that on set with other photo teams where, you see the mood board and you're like, oh, I love that. So we're going to create something similar. And they're like, well, we're just getting the placement right. And I look over at the set and it's the exact same shot, but with like this person's products or this person's model. So I can't emphasize enough that like this is for inspiration, and something that the photographers I look up to, like Camilla or like Tim Walker is a great example. Like Tim Walker's been quoted saying that he thinks of photography as like cooking, and it's a mixture. So you take a little bit of this flavor and then a little bit of that, and like, oh, here's a fairy tale I loved as a kid, and now I'm going to throw in this styling from Balenciaga's yesterday. Like it's when all of these unrelated elements merge and combine that you create something unique and something that really speaks to you and what you want to bring to the shoot, to the table, what you want to create visually.
That's such a great metaphor, especially with recipes and stuff. You could obviously make the same thing, but you're not adding your own flair to it if you're just making the same thing. So it's important, to add your own style to it, take inspiration, and go from there.
Yeah.
You have one of your kind of call sheets, I imagine, is here.
Right. Yeah. So
studio.
exactly. So this is again another example of like pre-production work. So this is what I mean by like a location mood board. So this was a studio in LA that we used for one of the shoots that is on my website that I can't really, it looks like a Vanity Fair set, basically. That was the inspiration, was the Hollywood issue of Vanity Fair and having all these, you know, people. So this just gives us an idea of like the space, the makeup stations. We were considering using the makeup stations as another set to have like a backlit makeup, like makes you feel like you're backstage, something really cool like that. On the top right image, those were all props that belonged to the studio. So like I included that so that we could consider them, but it was a lot of like old sports memorabilia that didn't actually service the shoot.
Right.
But
I mean,
this
you could
was so, like,
technically use it, but it wouldn't necessarily make sense to what you're shooting. Yeah.
yeah, but this makes it clear like we have high ceilings. We can do overhead octabags. We have daylight. We can do mixed lighting if we need. And it just kind of starts helping everyone like formulate the setup.
Right. All right. And then we have one last one. And this is just another one of just some great models. And I guess this is also a similar one from posing as well,
Yeah,
right?
this was for that shoot I was just talking about in the previous space. We pulled a lot of inspiration from Vanity Fair and how to have like these layers of people where every single person is the star. There's no like secondary, like everyone has their own space and their own interesting way of posing that makes them like an equal player in this composition.
Make sure you don't have that person front and center. Everybody else is backup singers or backup
Yeah.
posers, you know?
Yeah, no, it's no good that way.
But yeah, no, I'm so sad that we're coming up on time. So I think that's all the time we have for today. But it was really exciting having you on. I had such a good time. I learned a lot. I mean, I don't necessarily think I'll be out there being a photographer myself anytime soon. But I feel like we can take all of this information and apply it to our own fields. And also, even I'm just out there taking pictures for somebody else's Instagram. Maybe some of these things can help.
Go for the lower angle.
We have your Instagram right underneath your name right there as well. But also, I know that Bruce was asking if you have any behind the scenes shot camera rolling these days for socials, for like TikTok or something while you're working alongside. I know that you normally do your stories kind of as you work, but is that something that you kind of plan for, or that just kind of happens as it happens?
Yeah, I mean, TikTok's a huge marketing tool, so it is something that like I usually ask like the makeup artist or someone on set, like, hey, could you grab a couple of shots? That's how I got that really awkward photo of me against like the hood of a car in Park City, Utah.
Right.
Yes, I do have some fun behind the scenes photos. It's hard. I honestly think there's a value to like hiring someone to shoot video, because like I said, I'll request like, oh, makeup artist, could you also do this? But it's like on top of their job and what they're there to do, they also have to do that. So I don't think it's entirely fair to, you know, ask for a full production video. It would be something that I would hire someone for. And yeah, I think that sharing those kinds of behind the scenes videos on TikTok and then revealing the finished photo, like, is it a gimmick? A little bit, but it works. It's great marketing.
100%. Well, thank you for sharing all your knowledge. Obviously, you guys give Michelle a follow. She also has, you know, she has her Instagram, so make sure you check that out. We have their linked on the description below on Behance, and also if you guys are watching it on YouTube, obviously you can punch it in as it goes. But thank you so much, and I'm sure I will talk to you soon. And we're really looking forward to seeing what comes next from you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Ryan. I had a great time.
All right, bye. All right, guys. So that's it for this episode. We'll be back for Offset in 30 minutes, but actually in 5 minutes, we're going to be having, I believe, Hawk Rattle on, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. So make sure you stay tuned and stick around for more Adobe Live. We'll be back in just a little bit with Adam Reed. He's going to have some cartoons and illustrations, which, as you all know, is very dear to my heart. And I'm excited to be there with you guys. I'm going to grab some lunch and, you know, just kind of relax for a little bit, but I'll be right back. So thank you guys all for watching. Thank you for everyone that said hello in the chat. I'm scared I'm running out of broadcast time, so I can't run through everyone's names, but thank you for being here. It was good to see so many familiar faces, And I will see you all in just a little bit. Stay tuned, and thanks again for watching. Bye.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.
Go.